Hello and welcome back to Ave Imperator Productions. Today we're going to be taking a look at the strategy that came out of the ancient Greek times. We're going to go a little bit through the ancient history of Greece, and then we're also going to be applying it to a little bit later in the Hellenistic era. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is going to be the philosophy of Aristotle and his striving for the means. Now, we've talked a little bit about ancient Greek art in one of the previous episodes and their take on what made a person really good at the thing that they were doing, what produced art, and what it was to be truly excellent. The word that we used previously was techne, meaning a refined skill or an ability to do something extremely well because of practice. We're going to go a little bit deeper into that idea at the beginning of this part, and we're going to reflect on how Aristotle believed that one could achieve arete, or excellence. In Aristotle's view, excellence was achieved by straddling the excess and the deficiency of a given characteristic. So, if you wanted to act in an excellent way, if you wanted to use your techne to achieve arete in a particular field, you needed to know what the excess and the deficiency of that characteristic you were attempting to achieve was in order to aim for the middle. Now, this is a little bit different from the idea of a middle ground or of attempting to stay away from polar opposites or anything like this. The concept of arete that the philosopher put forward was more that through practice and refining of yourself and of your natural passions into physical characteristics, you would naturally come to observe that there was some perfect characteristic, often unnamed, sitting between two much more extreme ones. So let's take a look at courage first of all. If courage was the characteristic that you were looking to embody and to become excellent at, you first had to understand what the two extremes were. Now again, in this sense, with these characteristics, the extremes are defined as deficiency of and excess of. Too little and too much of a good thing can be just as harmful, although Aristotle did make some sort of arguments that certain deficiencies were better than certain excesses and vice versa, but we're not going to get too far into that right here because we're just setting the stage so we can understand a few more terms in just a few minutes. The excess of courage would be over self-confidence, meaning not knowing when you're actually capable of doing something and rushing headlong into just about anything. In Aristotle's day, it was very obvious why excessive self-pride in this sense could be very dangerous, and that was because if you were a warrior and you didn't know your limits, you could very easily rush into a battle and die, never being able to refine your skill or your craft again. The deficiency of courage would quite obviously be cowardice. If every time a challenge presents itself, if every time things get hard, you run away or you decide not to make any sort of attempt, you're never going to be able to constructively build on that concept and to move yourself towards courage. So again, in the refining of the characteristic of courage, you need to be careful of the deficiency and you need to be careful of the excess. The only way, in Aristotle's own words, to be able to find the mean of courage is through practice. This comes back to the concept of techne. You need to be able to constantly attempt to improve yourself, to constantly be able to work and every once in a while you will find yourself on the excess or on the deficiency of the characteristic you're working for. This doesn't mean you should give up, this just means that you need more practice, as in his view, these were not things that you were born with, these were things that you had to physically work at in order to truly grasp the potential of the excellence which you were attempting to have. Aristotle had another word, which was arche, and this is the first look or the first area, the beginning from where all characteristics were made. So if your first attempt at something had a lot of the struggling for excellence in it, you would be on a much better foot to move towards courage. If your first attempt was obviously cowardice, if your first attempt was obviously boastful, those were going to be the areas that you would naturally push yourself towards. The concept kind of makes techne a little bit more like sailing, where you can very rarely go perfectly towards whatever you're heading to because you may not know exactly where it is, it may be very far away, but you constantly need to be committing to course corrections and to bring in new information as it rolls in to steer yourself towards that middle and attain arete, the excellence for which you're looking for. Another example, besides courage, when you're looking at how to achieve excellence through virtue, would be self-control. Self-control is the median, whereas the deficiency would be self-insensitivity, not being able to respond to anything accurately and sort of being so far in control of yourself that you don't really allow any sort of input in, which obviously inhibits you from being able to make any sort of correction towards the center. And then the excess would be self-indulgence, where your self-control is so lacking that you are not capable whatsoever of being able to control yourself. So in the middle, you have controlling yourself. In the excess, you have controlling nothing. And in the deficiency, you have so much control that it really doesn't add up to much. So again, to sum up, Aristotle's arete and aiming for the means means you need experience, you need wisdom, and you need to be able to make the correct first steps on your road to excellence. So now that we have that out of the way, we're going to take a jump back from Aristotle and see the concepts that he developed a lot of his thinking from. We're going to look specifically at the Iliad and the Odyssey, comparing Odysseus and Achilles with these two more Greek words. There's going to be there's going to be several Greek words in this episode, so I hope that you're paying attention. But Odysseus versus Achilles can be broken down to these two ancient Greek terms, Metis versus Bie. So, what do these words mean? Well, very simply, Bie is strength or the vigor of a warrior. It's the ability to make combat and to head on head against your opponent with the intent of having a just and valorous battle. Metis is a little bit more complicated in that there is no direct English translation, but probably the best way of thinking about it would be strategic thinking or strategic intelligence. So Bie is very much espoused by the character Achilles in the Iliad, and Metis is very much enshrined in the abilities and the inner workings of Odysseus in the Odyssey. So first, we're going to be taking a look at the word Metis, since it has a lot more to do with our take on strategy and the development of strategic thinking. So again, Metis means strategic intellect, the ability to think fleet of foot, but it's a little bit more than that as well. Metis is more that the ends justify the means, and Bie is a bit more that the means can be held to the same as the ends. So what do I mean exactly by this? If Strategic thinking and conquest and imperium are the median, the excellence that a warrior, a general, a strategic thinker is aiming for. Then the deficiency would be Bie, and the excess would be Metis. If you hold too little for the strategies, the intellectual thinking, the ability to overcome your opponent through edge and through intellect, you just go in respecting your valor and your bravery, you're gonna sort of lose yourself a bit of an edge, and people who are willing to do the smart thing every once in a while will come up one on you. On the other hand, if you go full Metis, such as Odysseus did, you're going to have a lot of problems. If every time you have to solve a problem, you do so through deception and trickery and just a total disrespect for anyone else who might be around you, you're eventually going to get found out, and people are going to become much less likely to want to trust you if your reputation is that of a trickster. So let's look a little bit at where the word Metis comes from very quickly. It's actually a very interesting mythological story. Metis is, like I said, a word referring to strategic intellect, but it was also one of the Titans, the earliest of the gods in the ancient pantheon of Greece. Metis was very intelligent. She was the predecessor to Athena, and Zeus was very strong. So we had these two gods, even back before the Iliad and the Odyssey were at odds with each other, who really represented Bie and Zeus, and Metis in, well, Metis. Metis was actually taken as the first wife of Zeus, and Zeus loved her very much, but Zeus was afraid that if they were to have children, that those children would take the best qualities of both, and would be able to displace his place as the king of Olympus. So Zeus decided to eat Metis. He tricked her into turning into a fly and swallowed her whole. But Metis was actually already pregnant, and while inside Zeus, presumably dying in his stomach, I'm not really sure, there's not a lot of details on how exactly this part went, but while Metis was inside of Zeus, she actually forged armor and a helmet to protect the child, so that once she had died, she had given birth inside of Zeus to Athena, and Zeus started getting this really bad headache, so he went to his friend Hephaestus, who was the smithy in Olympus, and he asked him to split his head open to solve his headache. Again, not a whole lot of details on why that would be necessary, but that's how the story goes. And so then Hephaestus strikes Zeus upon the head, he is cleaved in two, and Athena jumps straight out of his head. As fantastic as that might sound, that's more just to explain that Athena, who was not only the goddess of war and of craft, but also of intellect and of strategic cunning, was the arete, or the excellence, between the Bie of Zeus and the Metis of Metis. So then just real quick, I want to take a look at Odysseus and a bit at the Odyssey and the Iliad to further illustrate what Metis meant and what the excess of Metis looked like and how it affected his life and his ability to function. So, Odysseus was not the strongest of the Greeks who sailed to Troy. He was not necessarily the bravest, the most courageous or valorous. He was certainly, though, the craftiest and the most intellectual and strategically minded individual. This was proved several times, but I think the most important case that we're going to look at first is the fact that this war had gone on for over a decade. There had been casualties in the thousands on both sides, and yet it wasn't until they listened to Odysseus that the war came to an end. Now that's what I mean when I say that Metis is more the ends justify the means, in that they had the capabilities to defeat the Trojans, but they were looking for valorous warfare, for battle, when they finally decided to trust Odysseus, he found a way to put the war to an end and have everyone sailing home. But why didn't they trust Odysseus sooner? This is another reason why the excess of this trait of Metis is not a particularly good thing. Nobody trusted Odysseus. There was no reason to. Several little points: when Achilles had been slain by Paris in the Trojan War around the end of the war, Odysseus wanted the golden armor that Achilles had that had been forged by the gods. But another soldier also wanted it, Ajax, and Ajax was much stronger and much more capable of taking the armor and actually being able to use it in battle. Odysseus used some tricky words and some deceitful language to drive Ajax into a rage and sort of had him go so mad that he killed himself. And then the only person that was looking for the armor anymore was Odysseus, because if you wanted it, you would have known that you would have also had to come up against him. Now there's another story with Odysseus, just real quick. Him and his men on the Odyssey were caught by a Cyclops. The Cyclops was going to eat them when he became so drunk because Odysseus and his men managed to feed him a bunch of alcohol. They drove a stake into his eye, and the Cyclops, I guess, screamed out in horror, and the other Cyclops came and were like, "Who's hurting you, brother? Who is taking your sheep? Who is attacking you through their cunning?" And the Cyclops yelled out, "Odysseus! Odysseus is attacking me through his cunning," because Odysseus was the name that had been given to Odysseus when the Cyclops asked. Odysseus was a combination of ou and tis, which in ancient Greek meant no man. So the Cyclops had yelled out that no man had attacked him, and no man had attacked him through his cunning. Now, ordinarily this wouldn't really be a problem, except this was Odysseus, and this was one of the few times where his extreme cunning got to save everyone and got to really shine. And because he had an excess of this trait, he did not get his men to safety immediately and sail home. He boasted. And again, excess and deficiency of characteristics, even if they sound like they can be a good thing in the case of Metis and Bie, or in the cases of self-confidence or courage, they're innately drawn away from arete, from excellence. And because Odysseus chose to boast, he was heard by the sea god, who just happened to be the father of the Cyclopses, Cyclopii, whatever, which made his journey home very difficult. So again, in summary, Metis is the concept of strategic intellect, but it's more than just that. It is an excess in the excellence of a strategic thinker. Because it is an excess in regards to a virtue of excellence, it is not well-rounded, and it holds the ends as being more important to the means, which, while it might be true for someone like Odysseus, it was certainly not true for everyone who surrounded him. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, I hope that you leave a like, or if there's something that you didn't understand, you want to see more of, any sort of input whatsoever, feel free to leave a comment or respond to just about all of them. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe so that you can see all the latest videos. And this is going to be a little bit longer of a set. It'll probably be about 3 episodes, so if you enjoy this, let me know. If there's anything else you want to see, let me know. But until next time, remember, Ave Imperator.